Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The number one podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
And welcome to another episode.
Oh boy.
Wagwan, I be there. What's good? It's your boy Glenn, aka G Ransom, host of the Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast, filling in for your boy Chunky. I just tried my best Chunky impression, and I don't know if it was that great, but you know, next time Chunky had to dip. So I'm filling in and speaking on his agenda today, which is going to cover cultural expectations and how they've affected our lives and molded us into the men that we are today. We're going to discuss our experiences on overcoming and or submitting to cultural expectations placed upon us by family in regards to significant life choices pertaining to family, marriage, career, finances, relationships, and love. And we're going to reflect on how these expectations impacted our lives. But before we delve any further, if you aren't already a follower or perhaps tuning in for the first time and would like to learn more about the show, then definitely check us out on Instagram at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod, where you can stay up to date on our latest offerings, announcements, and join the JJC community. All right, so let's get into it. I would like to introduce the members of the panel. I'm just going to read it verbatim of what Chunky wrote about you guys. So, you know,
Oh boy.
we're going to keep it completely original. You want me to try the Chunky voice again or just keep it original?
No. That's terrible, bro.
First, we got my ankles ashy, my knuckles too, and I don't give a damn if my knees are too. D-Lac.
Yo, that's what this man think about me, bro.
Man, shots fired. He went for
Why
your
not?
ankles, your knuckles, and your knees, man.
Yo, he
So-
went.
It's funny because I'm so well, like, lubricated. You know what I mean? So
Only
it's
the parts that
Moisturize.
moisturize. All right, bro.
Only, yeah, you know I lived with you in college, bro.
All right, bro. We well removed from college. I'm a grown man now.
I would say lotion was very safe in our dorm.
Oh.
But you know what? Real men only lotion the parts that show.
That was my statement. That was
Yeah,
my
part.
that was my slogan.
Good words. Good words.
Next,
man.
Mr. If there ain't no champagne, I ain't game. Francis, aka the franchise.
Hey.
Oh, wow. So I'm the party man of the group.
You are the party.
Yeah, that's a nice one, man. I respect that one,
The
man.
married
fine.
party man, that works.
Hey, my wife is. Hey, me and my wife are going whenever we can.
Yo, that's
Living your best life. I like it.
real. Also, if that backboard is made out of glass, he gonna bust that ass. Baby.
Oh man, I don't know about the busting that ass part, but yeah, I'm trying to channel my Shaq from the Magic in 1997, breaking backboards. Let's go. Let's get it.
I follow the Whippa. Finally, Mr. Pump Up Our G Ransom, Glenn, aka G Ransom.
Pump a bar.
Pump Up Our Boom Boom. Yeah, man. Bless.
Hey, Capleton to anybody who don't know.
You know, he was before he was Capleton. I think he was actually called the Lotion Man. I think I told you that before. Right?
Yeah, you told me about that. I was like, yeah, I love Capleton. He's so logical. He's like, he wasn't like that before.
But you know, Jamaican dance.
It's a rubber waistline man himself. Yeah.
Hey. Before we jump into the discussion, we'd like to dedicate this episode's Rep Yours shout out to Excellence Photography, an amazing NJ-based photographer with a keen eye for capturing life's most wonderful moments on film. Photographer's name is Danielle Ingram. The owner of the company has great camera work and editing skills to ensure every picture comes out perfect. You can check them out on IG, where you can find samples of their great work. And that's www.instagram.com/excellence.photography. I think that's excellence with an S, not a C at the end. So let's go ahead and get into our topic of discussion, which is cultural expectations explained and explored. And the first question he had on his agenda is, what is the biggest expectation of marriage when it comes to your culture? And just in case you didn't know, we are called the world's most cultured podcast, the diaspora's #1 podcast, because we consist of Jamaicans, Nigerians, Black Americans, Puerto Ricans. We covered it all. So that's where the culture play comes in. So let's go ahead and drop it over to Dre on this one. What is the biggest expectation of marriage when it comes to your culture?
I don't know. I can't think of necessarily any I'm trying to think of any expectations that my parents or maybe I think the biggest thing my father was probably just necessarily be a good husband, right? Be be the partner, be the best friend, be all the things to your wife, that I expect from you. I would say that was probably the biggest thing. I don't know if that necessarily is something specific to my culture, but it was definitely something that was probably instilled in me and both my parents, right? If you're in a marriage, you're in it all the way. My parents did get divorced, so they weren't talking the no divorce stuff. I know that maybe someone else will speak to that as maybe being part of their culture. That wasn't part of my culture. They definitely got divorced, and maybe accounted for me having to go to therapy a little bit to do that. Shout out to mom and dad. But yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is just kind of being being a good husband, the best husband that I could be, and being respectful and caring and loving and all that good stuff.
Let's hear from our fellow Nigerians.
Yeah.
Starting off with Francis. What part did culture play?
Yeah, I mean, like in Nigerian culture, man, we are savages, bro. Like in a traditional, man and woman Nigerian family, the women are, they are expected to be submissive to their husband. The husband tends to make the final decisions, and the woman is expected to like keep the kids, take care of the household, cook, still work, and bring in some bread in some cases. But ultimately, you are submissive to your husband. And one other thing is, Nigerian cultures, I mean, especially for the women, they are service, they have to provide service to others. Like when, if you have a daughter, or even for me growing up, even as a male, whenever like someone comes and visit the house, we have to serve them like food and plate. Like all they do is just sit on the couch, and we like pretty much hand over whatever they need, sit down. And that is like really pretty much what the woman does as if you don't have any kids, that responsibility falls on the wife, or the wife of the household. And you do all of that. And also when you visit somebody's house and you visit a family friend or whatever, you are also expected to do that, especially if they are even elders who are older than you are. You're expected to be in the kitchen and you actually help them cook in their own house, and you serve, then you clean the dishes before you leave. It's like, so when we were like younger, even though we were all males, whenever we visited like family friends and they cook, like we were like, my mom like is in the kitchen helping them cook. Like she's kind of helping the wife out, and the dads are kind of just sitting in the living room talking. And the kids, after we done eating, we were expected to go in and clean the dishes. So we did that growing up. But like I would not say my mom is submissive to my dad, but I think there's a level of respect there. Is more of a partnership there, I would say. But like from a traditional cultured Nigerian household, that is what the expectations are. And I'll let my cousin maybe add to that.
Yeah, I think you really spoke. I mean, you really, outlined it really well. So I'll just kind of speak on like when it's a different culture, okay? Because I think me and my cousin both, we didn't marry Nigerian wives, but in our culture, they Nigerian once you marry into the Nigerian family. Their expectations that everything that my cousin says, it still holds true, and then they still expected to do all those things. So it's very difficult to kind of balance those two things. Because, obviously, if your wife's of a different culture, she don't know about all that, and, making pounded yam and fufu and all that. She don't know about all that, and then, it's trying to be a good support person for her. So that way it's not like everything in the culture hits her all at once. And then also kind of like, I'm not gonna cap, like some of it, you gotta deflect some of it too. You know what I mean? You gotta like, you gotta dodge some of it because sometimes it's like, it can be a little too much, you know, for somebody who's not, you know, used to the culture. So yeah, I think traditional roles always kind of land really heavy in the Nigerian community. But it's even to, now I remember what I was going to say. So even to the point of like tribes, like the tribes even matter. So if you're Yoruba, your parents want you to marry Yoruba. If you're Igbo, your parents want you to marry Igbo. You know what I mean? Security, they're looking at security, you know what I mean? River State. Shout out to everybody. There's so many more. But yeah, Nigerians, they always want you to marry specifically that culture because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with outside the culture, but it's just that if you're from that culture, you don't have to try to learn anything. You already know what to expect. And that's really what it comes down to. It really just comes down to culture preservation. You know what I mean?
Let's take a pause right here, D. Not to cut you, but I think, is your mic on or no?
Yeah, it's on. You can't hear me?
Can you make sure that your mic is connected? Because it sounds like it's like, no. I mean, like, go to like the Zoom thing and make sure like you're specific, because it sounds like you're like echoing.
Like
so
echo.
it sounds like maybe your mic isn't. So
is that better?
That is better.
Oh,
that sounds so much better.
The little thingy slid out.
Yeah. That was it.
Yo, I'll be
it was using your computer's microphone. That's why it sounded so echoey. Now your voice sounds buttery and smooth. We don't need to do everything. Just everyone be quiet for a second. I'm just gonna clap 3 times just so that I can easily like know to to delete this part of the podcast. So 1 second.
Yeah, so my bad. Did you want me to start over?
Nah, continue where you left off.
Oh, okay. So basically, yeah. So I think that's just the big thing, you know. Yeah, the cultural expectations are there. You know, I think just in general, as we kind of go through these, you know, the differences of the culture, the first thing I just want to say is everybody got to just have an open mind. Don't look at anybody because anybody's culture with shade, because, you know, it's really about preserving your culture. People want to preserve their culture. You know, people don't want to lose what makes them them. Their parents, you know, the Yoruba my parents speak is definitely not the Yoruba that their parents speak. And you lose a little bit with each generation, but we're just all trying to preserve our culture. So, you know what I mean? It's definitely not going to be easy if you mix it up. Like, I mean, my wife's Jamaican, you know, like my best friend's Jamaican. But
cultures are kind of similar.
Yeah, but our cultures are similar in some ways, and we actually learn that mixing pot too. So it definitely, I mean, it works. It can work, but you just gotta be open-minded to, you know, the similarities and appreciate the differences.
Gotcha. So I have a question for you guys, and on that, I'll get into some of my expectations as well. Considering that you're Nigerians that married non-Nigerians, did you guys find it particularly challenging to kind of explain the aspect of the cultural expectations to your partners at the time? And do you felt like that potentially probably impacted, like, how did that impact your selection process, and how did that impact your family's point of view of you as well, as far as, you know, getting with someone that was non-Nigerian?
Yo, no cap, bro. My girl was like, you want me to do what? Like, yo, the hardest thing for my girl was so prostration. That's basically when you meet people, like, so when you we call them greeting adults, but you're supposed to do like a bow, you know what I mean? And it's interesting because almost every culture outside of America got it. Like, you know, Asians got it, Indians got it, you know, I don't know if the Europeans got it, but there's a lot of cultures that do this. But my girl was like, no, this is a Nigerian thing, whatever. But ultimately, you know, it really tests your relationship, and it shows the love y'all have for each other, because you end up balancing those things out. You know what I mean? I'm like, yo, I mean, just do it for my dad. You know, you gotta do it for my dad. You gotta do it for my mom. You know what I mean? You gotta do it for his brothers. And it's just, I mean, just do it for the immediate family. You don't gotta do it for everybody else. And then, like, even in Nigerian culture, there's there's like a quick way to do it. I mean, we ain't got no video, but like y'all should look it up. Nigerian prostration. There's like a little cheesy way they do a little dip. They don't do the whole full thing. So I was like, so my sisters were over here giving her tip. So it ultimately worked out where, you know, it really strengthened our relationship because she got closer to my siblings. You know, she learned more from my family. She learned more about the culture. But yeah, it definitely is a juggling act. You know what I mean? But it really will test your relationship. And you know, one thing is that you know whether it's true or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and to actually add to that, because you know my wife also does that, and I think you know like when we started dating, I think actually kind of added too much pressure to the whole process because I was nervous initially to
Mhm.
introduce my parents to her because you know like my last girl, like my ex was Nigerian, and my parents obviously loved her, and then now that was bringing a different girl to the house. I didn't really know how that whole process was gonna go. So I think I kind of scared my girl a little bit and put too much maybe too much expectations on her. So I think I think she struggled to kind of get to really know my parents a little bit because she didn't fully understand. I think I also probably did a bad job integrating the two. But
Mhm.
ultimately, she kind of learned on her own as she like spent more time with my family, and she really like got to like love. And she like knows the culture, and she picked what she wanted. So like as far as the kneeling down thing, I think she does it, and I think sometimes she does it too much because she kneels down for even people who are like our age, and I'm like, girl, don't kneel down for him. Like
He's a
no,
bum. Don't kneel down for him.
no. So like, but one thing I do love though, because like, you know, even when we were in New Jersey, like when we travel to like when we go anywhere, she does it like she does it to everyone. And it's kind of a like really, I'm really proud to see that she adapted and she made it part of what she does. And she does it for me, right? So to your point, like you said, because I think, you know, the right woman will make the adjustment to fit, you know, for so there could be balance there. So because there are things that I didn't get accustomed to growing up that I'm doing for her that was not outside of my realm, right? So I think you kind of have to do that for each other, and it's kind of what how that process went for us as well.
Yeah. So I guess my last question on that then is then, I guess from being with someone, and it's just so people that are also with partners that are non-Nigerian or maybe pursuing potential partners, it's like, was there any part of you in your selection, I guess your partner selection process that maybe wanted to get away from those cultural norms? Or do you feel like it was like your overall exposure to different cultures in America that led to you essentially picking a partner that was not of your, you know, same nationality or culture or heritage? Or did it simply come down to maybe that individual's characteristics? Like, you know what, you know, my wife has these qualities that I wanted, and we would eventually, you know, work in the culture aspect versus someone that's of the same culture. Maybe they have certain qualities that as an individual just didn't gel, but they met the culture piece, but as a person, it was just not the right one.
I mean, it was hard because for me, like, I mean, I heard Mary, don't bring a white girl home, don't bring a Hakata home. All this like don't like you hear it from your parents, your family friends, your like cousins and aunties and uncles. Like all the preachers bring home a girl that looks like you and that speak the same language as you. So pretty much you'll bring home a Yoruba girl, right? So like there was a point in time that actually did like really wanted to do that. And I like sought after a couple girls that I found attractive, then that I was like, that I met more organically. It was my process. It wasn't like my parents trying to hook me up with someone. It was like girls in the Nigerian community that I found like, oh, she's really cute. Like, let me see what's up. Like, hey, you want to go out? What you doing tonight or whatever? And we kind of on got with a few of them, and I just really just never gel to that level of attractiveness or just like we just didn't get along to that level where we just didn't have a lot in common, I think, personally, outside of the cultural part. So like my girl came along, you just kind of, you know, it was not, I wasn't looking to get away from the culture, just happened to be, she was outside of the culture and of the race. So it was not some kind of intentional or thing. It was just kind of happened to be. But I wanted a Nigerian girl initially, you know, like I said, my ex was Nigerian, but it didn't work out. And after that, I tried to get a few other girls and it just didn't work out. So
So one
yeah.
thing, cuz one thing you definitely point on, because I think I don't know if your mom did it to you, but my mom did me. So I tried to break my heart. Yeah? You just wanted to go against us. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with
bro.
that. You know, they take it to such an offense as if we're like intentionally trying to break their hearts or something like that. But no, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, love is what love is. And, you know, whoever you find is who you find. And, you know, that's the hardest part for them because, you know, they don't want us to make a wrong decision, you know, and I feel that, you know, I really do. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, when you're in a different place with different options, you know what I mean? And we're different people, you know what I mean? Like we are Nigerian at core, but, you know, we do have some American attributes about us. And I think, you know, we're not going to be necessarily like a girl that can make, you know, pound of yam might be appealing for somebody else, but for me, you know, that's not a number one selling point. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was the hardest part for, you know, my mom to kind of grasp, you know, it's like, so.
I mean, but like one thing I do understand though, because after kind of seeing my parents' interaction with my wife's parents, I understand like some of the cultural like aspect of it that they wish. And like when I see it, I understand like, okay, I kind of feel bad about it because if it was someone who's Nigerian, some of even the language barrier wouldn't be there, you know, the communication line would be there, you know, it would be more fluid, I should say. So it's just like, so when I look at it from their angle, I understand like why they always kind of make that request. It's like, it could be a selfish, or also like preserving the culture, like you said, cuz earlier. So I think it's a combination of all of that because they also think about like what their comfort level is going to be with the parents and would they accept them for who they are. Like my parents don't drink, right? And they don't like go on random like dates to a restaurant, go on a boat. And Sarah parents love to like do that. That's what they do. So there's they don't have anything in common. So whenever they do get together, it's hard. I feel like they find ways to talk about stuff, but like it's not as organic and natural if they were interacting with another Nigerian parents, you know?
Yeah. And that's a good point too. Oh, my bad, Sloss, go ahead.
Nah, go ahead.
And I think that's a really good point too that my cousin's making is because I guess one thing that I was a little bit naive on was not, so in Nigerian culture, it's not more, I mean, you're not marrying just a person. It's about the families integrating too. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy for us to get caught up and be like, well, I mean, I like the person, so y'all need to like the person. But the thing is that, you know, they, like my mom, she's all about, you know, building relationships with people. I mean, having strong rapport with people, having like that continuous, you know, not just like at the wedding, we say what's up and we keep it moving. You know, my mom is all about, you know, let's continue the conversation after the wedding. You know, these are my new family members. We all gonna be chill. We're gonna be vibing together. And if she doesn't get that, you know, some cultures, that's not the expectation, you know, like they don't do that. So that was very tough, you know, for my mom to try to understand that, you know, you gonna get to know these people, but it's not gonna be where, you know, they're gonna be inviting you over every weekend, you know, to be having pepper soup and just chill and eat together. Facts. That's not how it is. And that is very difficult, you know, for them to kind of grasp. And that's also explains why they want who they want, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I guess even like a lot of, like, just to echo, like a lot of those standards are very similar, like growing up in the Jamaican household, because like, I think even though we don't have, like, at least to my knowledge, just none of those, like, there are some traditions that we carry out, but I think that are going to be like game changers. Like, okay, your wife doesn't celebrate these holidays. Okay, she's not ideal. You know, it's never anything like that. But to speak to the point of simplicity and ease, like the integration of the family is a lot easier knowing that person's from that same background, because you assume they like envelop or kind of just embrace the same values as you do. You know, like in Jamaican households, respect is a big thing. You can't just walk into the house, even if you had a shitty day. You ain't walking into the house bypassing your parents and not saying good evening. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, and even like in the, you know, American culture, it's the same thing, I believe also as well. Whereas like you know, you're not coming in here disrespectful. I don't care how bad your day was. You better come in here, greet me, and respect me. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, and also with Jamaicans upholding this kind of sense of pride and excellence, like another standard was, you know, don't be with someone that has a baby. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, start your own bloodline, start fresh, don't bring any drama or anything that'll bring shame upon the family in. You know what I mean? So it was just like, you know, even looking at my perspective where my partner has a child, it was just like, you know, I just felt like, you know, my family in particular started to ease up a little bit, like, because they know that knowing me, knowing Jamaicans, we're gonna do what we want to do at the end of the day. So it's kind of like, you know, knowing that I'm gonna do what I feel is best for me, and you know, them basically having to accept it, and you know, not letting culture get in the way of finding a partner. But I can see where, you know, and from your perspective, culturally, there's a lot more traditions involved. There's a lot more actual acts that you have to perform involved, and you know, how that could potentially be a hurdle for some, but essentially that could also root out the ones that ain't meant for you in the first place. So, you know, I mean, I think I laugh at, there's a 90 Day Fiance. I don't know if you guys ever seen that show, but
Yeah.
there was
Oh
a
my
couple
gosh.
where there was a woman, I think from Georgia, that married or was trying to get married to a Nigerian man.
Michael.
And
His name's
yeah.
Michael. I'm a little
Of
bit
course, Dre
embarrassed, but
watched it.
I watch all that trash reality TV, man. Keep it a buck. My
Hey,
wife
I'm
likes
not-
it, so I like it.
I'm not
but
gonna
shout
lie.
out to Michael. Shout out to my guy Michael in Nigeria, man.
First thing she was like, I'm American. I ain't doing none of this stuff. Like, I am American, you know. And it was just like, you know, I know it's a show and everything, but yeah, it's almost like a litmus test for your relationship. Like, it's just like
And he's like still in Nigeria, so like I would assume like whatever you guys are going through is like times 10 because he's
Out
still
there.
like physically
Yeah,
in,
he's still in the culture, yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he's in the
tough.
thick of it.
Yeah, we call him fresh off the boat. He's gonna be like straight about that life.
Yeah, not
Good
to
luck.
get too much into a tangent, but his mother was scared at first. Sorry to have this sidebar, but I know
okay.
that you guys will find this funny. His mother, when she found out that he was, you know, engaged to this white woman, she was scared that she was gonna take him to the U.S. so that he could be her slave.
What?
That was her expectation, is that like she was gonna take him away, take him from Nigeria, he's gonna come to the States, and he was gonna be her slave or whatever. And I thought it was like a really interesting thing.
Okay, question, Dre. How
Yeah.
did does the show tell you how they meet? Like, where did they met? They met online.
They met online.
Okay.
And it seems to be, you know, I know that there's like a lot of stereotypes of people who there was another Nigerian gentleman who was on the show, and he seemed like he wasn't as it didn't seem like love was the primary interest. I think his name, what's his name? Soldier Boy. His name was Soldier Boy. No, I just gotta do both sides. But Michael seems like he truly is like authentically in love with, I think her name is Angela, that he's like truly in love with her. Obviously, she puts him through a lot. She talks to him crazy. I don't know how he deals with her stuff, but yeah, they met online. It looks to be like a 100% like he loves her. It looks like he's not like, I don't even think he's like in a rush to move here. Like he seems to be like that he legitimately met her and fell in love. It's just crazy. But yeah.
Get that green
Hold on,
card
so
and
like-
bounce, bro.
Hold on. So they
Oh
sent a
my
camera crew back to Nigeria to capture.
No,
all this?
so what
How did that work?
happened was basically she went to visit him. So she's gone to visit him like 4 times now, and the camera crew is gone every time. Normally they have the person from that country.
Mhm.
They visit them one time, and then they come to the States and live with them for the 90 days, and they have to get married. But I guess with difficulties with the visa for him, like they've not been able to do that. So she's basically visited him in Nigeria a lot lot of pure
Nigeria don't give out those
comedy.
visas for free.
So are they
comedy to see
married
all
now?
No, I think they got married.
I'm over here
in-
asking them like.
I
all
think
the
they got
details.
married. I think they got married in Nigeria.
Okay.
But she's still waiting for like the American I guess visa,
Ceremony.
marriage visa.
Man, I'm over here like Drake. Describe the
No,
the
I'm
attributes
not.
and the
I'm not.
physical
I'm not
appearance
embarrassed,
of
but I
those
love that
people.
show. Yeah, no, it's trash TV, but I love it. But it was also really interesting to kind of just get a flavor for like the Nigerian culture a little bit because they're going there, and he's like, we got to get goats, right? Like we got to do these things, right? We
Yeah,
have to
people
do
not used
these,
to
you
that.
know.
The
You have to
dowries,
give.
man.
You have to
He
give my
African,
family.
African.
Yeah, you have to give
Mhm.
my family gifts. You have to do
Mhm.
this thing, and you know, it's really interesting for me to kind of. So also, I immediately thought of like how cool it is that you guys like have these like cultural things, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I have that I'm just like I don't know why we do it, right? But we do it,
Mhm.
right? There's no
Yeah.
like culture, and I'm sure a lot of this stuff eventually kind of. I'm sure like some history nerd kind of can trace it back to like, oh, like this custom really comes from, you know, Eastern or Western Africa, right? Or you know, something
Mhm.
like that. But definitely to speak to the Glenn's part, definitely when you go to visit someone's house, you definitely have to say hi to everybody. That I don't know if that's a Puerto Rican or a Black thing. I know for me, some of the lines are blurred there, but definitely whenever you go to someone's house, you need to walk through the house, or you need to say hi to everybody there as soon as you get there. There's no that's considered a no.
Exactly. So I'll hit this next question on this one, and that's to speak on, I guess, how involved are your families in your current marriages?
Glenn, we haven't really heard much about your culture yet. Have you kind of?
I spoke on it. I guess as far as not really there being any standards, it's just the respect piece, the acceptance piece. And there's this also like those being the main things, not marrying someone that has a child was like another big thing we expected
Oh
culturally.
yeah, sorry.
Kind of
Yeah.
rehash it, but no problem. And I guess I'll speak to this one as well, because this is very prevalent in a Jamaican household, and a family. How involved would you say are your families in your relationships and your marriages? And another part to that question is if a family member expressed their disdain for someone you were dating, how would you deal with that topic? Or how would you deal with that?
Hmm.
And let's start off with D Black.
I'll go.
Ready, so let's start off with
I'll go. Yeah. I mean, I think in general they want to be super involved, but I'm not about that. Yeah, they could try, but I'm not about that. Like I tell my parents all the time, it's so funny. The craziest part, the absolute craziest part is that it was actually this Nigerian minister who kind of like came and prayed for us, after our wedding. And she was like, I will never forget her. She was like, your parents are going to want to be all involved in your wedding. Everybody's going to have insight. Everybody's going to feel like they, know what's best for you. But at the end of the day, it's y'all two, y'all got to make the best decision for y'all and live by that. And when she said that, I was like, oh, it's a Nigerian minister from Nigeria who just told me that I should tell my parents to pretty much mind their business.
Wow. I'm surprised.
So I was very surprised. I'm not gonna lie, I was taken away. And ever since that, I was like, you know what? Because that's the one thing in Nigerian culture that's always so difficult is to balance like respect for your parents and individualism. You know what I mean? Like we always want to be respectful for your parents, but it's very difficult because you know what I mean? You want to do your own thing. You want to ultimately be your own person. And you're not going to be under your parents forever. So, to have someone, that literally was like, yeah, tell your parents to kick rocks. Sometimes it's okay. Tell them to kick rocks. Like, it was very empowering. It was very empowering. And then, I mean, and ever since that time, I've been, telling my parents like, hey, I don't necessarily say kick rocks, but I'll be like, this is what me and my wife are doing. And that's the decision we made. And that's it. It's not a conversation for y'all. Yeah. And my parents have learned to respect that because, that means that we really thought about the decision we made and we're confident in the decision we made. I mean, I always will I'm not to the point where I'm pigheaded where I won't listen to feedback, but with that feedback, you're not going to make the ultimate decision from my house. That's basically it. And my parents respect that. So I loved it for that.
Yeah, no, I think me and my parents went through the same process too, as well, because we got to a point that, but I do appreciate my parents always kind of eventually like leaning towards my decision and just kind of let me make the decision and they support me. But before we get there, there's a lot of back and forth that happens initially. There's always that back and forth, that fight. Then you kind of talk it out. Then they just kind of let you make your decision. So, but over time, they just they learn to let go, especially when you do get married and you have a significant other now. Like I have a wife. I think they tend to they back up, even back off even more compared to when you were just dating or engaged or whatnot. And but if my parents, yeah, I think even if they don't like whoever I was dating, they share their feelings on it, and I tell them how I feel about it, and we agree or to disagree on it. I won't like not do something because they said it.
Yeah,
I
no, that's
I,
like
I listen to what their insight, their viewpoint on it, and I also share mine. And one decision that, like, for example, like my parents wanted me to get engaged in the state, so I got engaged in Jamaica. My parents wanted me to do it in the state, but I did it in Jamaica regardless, and they were not happy initially, but they got over it. They fully support what my decision. We had to talk about it, but it's just one of those things that you have to be able to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. Is really what it comes down to. You have to be self-assured with your decision. You have to know how to vocalize it, and you can't like be intimidated to face them, because that's the first battle. I think if you can't stand up to your parents and tell them like, this is what I want, then you're already lost, because they want you to actually show them that, okay, I know why I made this decision. This is what I'm doing. And if you could show that to them, I think they trust you over time and trust your decisions. And I think my relationship with my parents is really important to me. So I do value everything that we go through. And I feel like, it's really important to kind of find that balance.
And I can speak to that as well, because I will say I am guilty of like really like dropping partners just because my parents expressed like, you know what, I don't think she's the right one for you. And I kind of think that speaks also to the cultural angle of the household, the Jamaican household, where you're constantly striving for your parents' acceptance. And I would say, like, honestly, growing up in the Jamaican home was probably one of the most critical. Is like, and sometimes it can feel like there's nothing you can do that will ever be good enough. You know what I mean?
I know that feeling.
And it's just like, you could do everything, and it's just like, well, this person did this and this person did that. And it kind of just becomes this comparison jousting situation where you're just like, all right, what will I do that will ever be good enough? And I kind of obliviously fell into that mindset, I think, sometimes, where it was just like, all right, well, sorry, but, I always felt like bringing someone to Jamaica was always the revealing moment. It was like, at that point, you met all my family. Here's the consensus. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of relationships dropped after that Jamaica trip, to the point where I didn't even want to bring anyone to Jamaica anymore. It was just like, you know what? Let's just wait. So it's just like, I definitely agree with the points that, yeah, making your own mind and, coming to your own informed decision, essentially good or bad, up to you. At least you can say, you know what, I did what I felt was best for me, and not family or people too. And people can make good or bad decisions, good or bad choices. So go ahead, Joy.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I feel like my parents, so my parents are kind of come from two different schools. My mom is very kind of quiet. She doesn't really, I think I probably take after my mother in this respect. My mother's not very vocal, so I don't think my mom would ever tell me that she wouldn't like someone I was dating, unless it was something, it would have to be something like drastic, like she thought they were using drugs or something like that. I feel like that would be the only time my mom would be super vocal about saying something. But for the most part, I think my mom, again, unless there was any really crazy red flags that she saw, and it would have to be something that, like, I think anyone would notice and see. My father, on the other hand, is super vocal, right? So very quick to, oh, I like her, or maybe he would say, maybe he wouldn't say I don't like her, maybe he would say something else or whatever. But especially when I was younger, I think my father was a lot more vocal. I think he kind of learned over time that, like, I was going to ultimately do whatever I wanted to do. he had to kind of understand that, he taught me kind of the things to look out for, the things to kind of watch out for, and kind of just be respectful of that. Really didn't have any kind of issues with my wife and my family kind of accepting her right away. Same thing I would say from her family. It's always been, super respectful and nice, and everyone I've met. Luckily, our parents also kind of take the angle of like, that's y'all business, right? We're not really. Another piece of advice I got from maybe it was my father actually, but basically just saying that like keep issues or problems within your house, right? Because certain things, right? Obviously, it's not to say to not talk to your family, but you need to be very careful about what you tell your family, because you may get past those issues, right? But your family is your family, right? They're always going to remember those things. So really being careful about the things that you share with them about your partner, because again, that could be one of those things where, your mom, right? Your mom is your mom, right? Like your mom cares about you more than she cares about, your partner, right? So if you tell your mom that like your partner said something or did something crazy, your mom's always going to remember that. She's always going to remember. She may not be able to let that go. You may have gotten over it, but you can't expect her to. So I was always kind of told really early on that, obviously it's not that you don't talk to your parents about everything, but just be really careful about the things that you do mention to them. And, had those kind of conversations really early on with my wife as well. Like, look, if we have a problem, I want us to work it out, right? I'm not telling you to don't talk to your family about it, but I'd rather us talk about it first, right? I'd rather us kind of work through the issue or the challenge first. Because again, I've had other relationships where that became a problem, right? Because you then did something, then your partner's sister had beef with you, right? Every time you showed up, right? It was an argument, right?
Oh my gosh.
So just that's also just one tip that I would say. I know some people are super close with their family and they tell them everything, but you need to really be careful about that, because that could become an issue in your relationship. Because at the end of the day, to D Black's point, right? What his marriage counselor said, which is probably some of the best advice you can get, is at the end of the day, it's your relationship. It's not your parents' relationship, right? They're not the ones kind of, they're not the ones legally married to those people, right? So just trying to keep it in-house as much as possible. And luckily both of our families have been super, super respectful of that. Even as, I haven't shared too much of this on the podcast, but just kind of my wife's and I's kind of challenges and having a baby, they've all been super kind of respectful and maybe they've bitten their tongue and maybe not really told us about, all the things, but they've really been kind of really careful about kind of what they say to us and making sure that they don't overstep those boundaries, which I think is really important.
Yeah, Dre, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. No, I mean, one thing that to actually even make a point about what you said, because my wife, actually, we kind of dealt with that like early on in our relationship, where like when we get into an argument, she tells her mom, because her and her mom are like best friends and they're really close. And she has a younger brother as well. So like for me, it was like very awkward, after we get into a fight, and I know she already called her mom and told her, and then her parents invite me for dinner, and I'm like, I don't want to go because I know you just told them about this. It's like, it is like, it can strain your relationship, man. Like, especially if you guys are like not strong enough to like overcome some of those awkwardness or challenges that comes with that. And so another point I want to make, that something my mom told me that I've actually shared it with like few of my friends who are also in this kind of situation of kind of dealing with like parents and spouse or girlfriend, significant other. My mom shared that do not put your spouse over your parents, and do not put your family over your spouse. So it's like, but that is the hard part. How to properly balance your spouse and also give your parents and your family what they need, and not feel like you are putting them against each other, or even like putting one over the other. Yeah.
Mhm.
So like my mom always say, like, you have to pray for God's wisdom on how to balance that, because it's not easy, right? So I think it's a really awesome quote, and I've kind of shared it with people a lot.
Yeah, 'cause I
Also,
would
you're
say, like,
biased. you're biased too when you're telling the story, right? So you're telling it from like your perspective for the most part, right? When we're, if I'm reaching out to one of you guys about something I'm struggling with, I'm telling you about it from my perspective, right? So of
Exactly.
course it's going to be like
Exactly.
leaning
Yeah.
that like, oh, Dre is this perfect person, man. Why is his wife doing this to him or whatever?
Why
It's
would
like,
you do that to my Dre?
yeah, so just also being mindful of that too.
I think like another part of that too, even though I'm not the non-married person in the group, but just understanding that the nature of those relationships are entirely different. You know what I mean? I'm not sleeping with my parents at the end of the day. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
Exactly.
to kind of thrust the relationship I have with my parents in the same category as the relationship you would have with your wife or your husband or whatever. That's, to me, that's just insane. It's like the level of love should still be there, but understand, once you separate from family, start your own, your family becomes a priority. So you know what I mean? Your nuclear setting. I think D-Black, you had a point to drop in there.
Yeah, man. So one thing I just feel like, as a, when it comes to like, it's not just a cultural thing, like or I should say like a different, like an African or other ethnic groups, other cultural groups. I think it's very important. One thing we're kind of losing in society is the value that comes from the screening process of, of family members and people getting involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's very important that, you have, your mind made up on what you want to do and who you want to be with. But, like having your parents involved, having close family members involved. I mean, not everybody got their, some people don't have their dad, some people don't have their mom, some people, they don't have Nigerian culture or other cultures, but to having that community be involved, it really improves, in my opinion, the longevity of that relationship, because it's really because not only are you dealing with the challenges with that person who's constantly challenging you every day, putting, the toothpaste back without the cap, or, leaving the toilet seat up, or putting the toilet tissue backwards. I'm not talking about my wife specifically. I'm just saying anyone who does those things are evil. But, but it's just having other people in your corner to look at your relationship from an objective perspective. Okay, this is the culture that you are, and this is what you identify with. Does this fit within your culture? Does this fit within what you identify with? Does this match your beliefs? Are y'all gonna be, like even my mom, one thing she even brought up was, like the genetics and stuff like that, like, because there's a lot of biological things. Have y'all looked at that? I'm like, it seems like it's annoying, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I love her, I love him, like, mind your business. But the more and more you start thinking about, like, yo, damn, that's some really good questions. I didn't think about that. Because I feel like in society, we're always afraid to have those tough conversations. Because I think, remember, we had one podcast, I think of season 1, when we were talking about like the right time to tell somebody you love them, the right time to tell somebody, like what you ultimately want in a relationship. And when we have this cultural background, these family members pushing the narrative of those conversations in us to make us think about those things a lot sooner, it makes us affirm, like, yeah, okay, I've already had that conversation with this person. We already talked about kids. We talked about, the religion. We talked about where we want to live. We talked about, how much money we got to make. We've had all those conversations, and I'm sure it really will improve the longevity of your relationship. So don't shun away from your family and your culture. You know what I mean? And the people. When I say your culture, I mean your surrounding. Don't shun away from that, because there's a lot to be learned there. They have good values. And then they're looking at your relationship objectively, because you may think you can, but it's extremely difficult to do.
I would say, like, even the challenge with you guys in particular is kind of showing that, hey, we can marry non-Nigerians and still make this junk work. So it's kind of like not a lot of people want that spotlight, but just knowing that you have that responsibility and you're able to do that is setting kind of like the trend, or maybe even changing your family's mind about certain things as well. You know what I mean? And just understanding that it's all really about the individual, not so much culturally, because you can meet similar people within your ethnicity and still not get along. So
Yes.
I get
Facts.
I was gonna add to that point. Like my parents kind of, my father's Black, my mother's Puerto Rican. Before I was born, they were not necessarily happy that they were together. It was a kind of a big kind of contention point. But obviously my parents didn't listen to what their parents said, and once I was born, everything went out the window, right? All the families kind of embraced each other or whatever. But yeah, there is that piece as well, as that it works on both ends. They can kind of support you or give you different insight, but they could also not be giving you the best the best advice as well. So it's tough.
No, and I agree with that, Dre, but I think it's just important to just the scrutiny is the part.
Absolutely.
Because even if their opinion is totally trash, let's keep it a buck. Even if somebody's giving you relationship advice and it's totally trash, they're still looking at it from an objective perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can take that insight and be like, okay, hold up. Like, don't dismiss it off the bat. Just be like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, she's a different ethnicity group. That don't matter to me. Bye. Like dismiss them right there. You know what I mean? But at least apply it, because again, fully flushed relationships brings down that divorce rate. It really allows the relationship to go through it gives you a better chance. And that's all we really want, a better chance at having a long-lasting relationship.
So we speak on, and I know D Black, you had mentioned the genetics piece, and I think one can't ignore the impact of culture, specifically when it comes to having children, raising children, and kind of expressing like, okay, what route will our children go? Because with culture, there's kind of an expectation that, okay, you're going to follow these particular values, you're going to instill these values, you're going to uphold them. She's going to be making the fufu. The kids are going to be making the fufu. Like everybody's going to be doing this. They're going to speak Yoruba. You got to learn the language. And, even from my experience dating, Nigerians, it was like, all right, well, listen, you got to learn the language. And it's kind of like, yo, I'm 25. I'm not about to learn Yoruba. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like, so it was kind of like, how do you feel? And I think like, particularly when you're having children, that's when family really does come into play, because you're going to need that support system.
Yeah, for real.
So it's just like, okay, what challenges do you foresee culturally, or how are you addressing the children aspect when it comes to, okay, what culture they're going to follow? And, what values are we looking to instill, and how are you going to do that as a couple, considering that your partners are non-Nigerian?
I mean, for me, that's easy. I think, my bad.
Go ahead, guys.
Well, for me, I think that's easy. Is we're gonna follow our culture, and that's all there is to it. Because, like I said, like I gave you an example of my parents. And it's so funny because I had this conversation with my parents so many times. I'm like, yo, your version of so I'm about to expose my mom real quick, but my mom is actually Shakiri. She was born Shakiri, which is a completely different tribe. They're not Yoruba. But my mom, you would think my mom is Yoruba, just because, how well she assimilated to the culture, but that's because, my mom ultimately made that decision that she's going, assimilate to the culture. She's going to pick up everything that was important to my dad. But then there's still parts of them that they still don't do to this day, Like I always tell my mom, like, sometimes when I hear Yoruba from growing up, like when I talk to somebody from like way back home, like they're Yoruba, like they don't break it up. Like for instance, like Nigerians here in the US, like they'll mix Yoruba with English. So it's not always straight Yoruba the whole time. So there's certain words that I've literally never heard. And I understand Yoruba very well, but it's like, I'll be talking to somebody like that's been in Nigeria their entire lives, and they'll be saying something like, wait, what? Slow down. What are you talking about? Whoa. You know what I mean? But then I'm used to hearing my parents, and I'm like, yeah, I know Yoruba. You know what I mean? So I think the main thing is just it's gonna be important to define your culture yourself. There's certain parts of your culture that you guys are gonna bring together, some things you're gonna leave behind, and it's just up to y'all. It's gonna be what's important for y'all.
Yeah. To kind of add to that, I think ultimately you and your spouse have to kind of come up with something that works for you. But one thing that I feel like that's part of our culture that I do appreciate though, like, my parents left the value of like family, how important it is. I feel like my parents like did everything for us. Like just kind of thinking back to how much sacrifice they made for us kids, it actually like kind of makes me emotional sometimes because I just kind of like wish I could do so much more for them because if my parents have $1 and we need it, they will give it to us literally. So like, and I know that's not like how like some other culture is or even some other families are. So like, so that's a value that's tied to our culture that I feel like that I'm definitely gonna take with me. Growing up, my parents was very strict. Like I couldn't even tell my parents nothing. Like I have a I have a story like piercing. My parents were not a big pierce like earrings and stuff like that. They were against it, like drinking. So in high school, I decided to get a magnet earring. I don't know if I shared this story before, but I decided to do a magnet earrings because I wanted earrings so bad. So I got one. Then I somehow I got infection at the spot where I put it. And
Off
my
a
mom,
magnet.
yeah, bro, I don't like off the magnet. So my mom was like, what's going on? She couldn't figure it out. And one day she was like, hold up. And I don't remember if she saw me with it or something, but she like smacked me so hard in the back of my head. But it's like, but like that just like example how strict they are. Like they don't believe in like staying out late, stuff like that. So but like when I have kids, I want my kids, I want to be able to tell my kids stuff. Like I want them to trust me enough where they can share their deepest like secret that like, we grew up with a lot of secret. There's a lot of things my parents would never find out that I did. It's funny because my cousin was at my wedding and I actually shared one of the things that my siblings and I did, but I thought it was appropriate to share that at that moment. But there's a lot of things we've done, but that's really important. So like, and I'm sure my wife is, she's Hispanic, so Honduras, so she has her cultural stuff she's gonna bring to the table as well. So it's gonna be a well blended, cultured, but there's definitely some piece of my culture that I plan to bring with us for sure.
So the way it sounds like is that, in the event, you have, knowing that you're in a relationship with someone that's non-Nigerian and they have their own cultural values, that there's essentially going to have to be this juggling act of, okay, you're expected to do this when you're with this family, but then you're also expected to do this with that family. So couldn't that somewhat present like a tear, like to where maybe the child's even confused, like, or is this going to have to be this constant switching of roles depending on whose family you're with at any given time?
Well, at least for me and that's not going to be the case. Like my kids going to be who they are. So you be who you are. I'm going to teach them the respect that my parents put in us, and they have to display that to everyone, not just to my parents. It's going to be a respect that will translate to other people, even outside of the family, right? So as long as we kind of teach those core values, my hope as a parent is my kids will kind of carry those legacy on as well and pass on to their kids. So I understand what you're saying. Like obviously, if my kids will not kneel to my, to my spouse parents, because that's not a thing. Like to my parents-in-law, like that's not a thing for them. But like if my kids saw my parents, they better kneel. Or
Better kneel.
They better do that. That's
don't play no games.
Yeah, like that's an expectation. You need to like do that because I do it. So I think because I'm going to set the example for them because that's the life I live. I kneel for my parents, and when I see my in-laws, I give them a hug or I shake their hand or whatever. So like, so that's the expectation. It's not. I don't think it's that hard. But I do understand that there could be a lot of challenge that comes with that because it could be overwhelming at first to them, I think.
And I think, Dre, speaking from a biracial background, what do you think the take is as far as, with you, with the plans and the works, God willing?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I got a little bit of an advantage, my growing up, obviously, father's family, mother's family were different in a lot of ways. I was always kind of told that, you got the best of both worlds, right? So, they always kind of celebrated the things that were different between the different, families, different foods, different, music, different ways of doing things, right? Even with like traditions, right? Of like, my Puerto Rican family's house, they opened up Christmas gifts differently than when I went to other families' house, right? Like just all those things were differently. I would say probably in my household, it would probably be the same thing of, very similar to what D Black is saying, kind of us establishing what our culture, what our culture is, right? I would assume it's probably taking like, the traditions or things that are really important to me and making sure that those are, I would articulate those to my wife, and I'm sure she would probably do the same thing with like kind of articulating, the things that are really important to, when she grew up, and kind of, I would say incorporating those two. And then I would hope that with, when they are with whatever family that, very similar to what, Francis was saying, at the very end of the day, it's about respect. It's about, being polite. It's about, speaking of my Black family, stay in a child's place, making sure you're not, being, really it's more of a respect thing. But that, that's the biggest thing, is I think probably it'll just be like a blended thing, kind of taking the best, what's most important to me, what's most important to my wife, and then kind of, I think also some of it is also just like figuring it out as you go, right? I'm assuming that we all probably have ideas of things that things that we're not going to do. I'm sure we're going to probably make some of the same mistakes that maybe our parents did, right? Or maybe we're going to look at what our parents did and make sure that we don't replicate those things, right? Maybe Francis, to your point, like when your kid wants to get a piercing, you'll be like, okay, let me take you to the spot, right? I'm gonna take you to Piercing Pagoda. I know I'm kind of aging myself. I don't know if they still have those in the mall, right? But you're gonna take your son or daughter to Piercing Pagoda. You guys gonna be there to get the piercing, right? You're not gonna, maybe you won't place emphasis on that, but maybe there'll be other things that are no-goes for you, right? Maybe piercing is not going to be the thing. Maybe it'll be something else, but I would assume a lot of this stuff is going to be like learning on the go. Some of these things may change before the children gets here.
So I got one question for the group, because we talking about like, obviously our kids and like a generation, our prodigy, they're going to ultimately basically be reflections of us, right? The diaspora that we've defined for ourselves. What is, if I don't know if you even have this conversation with your significant other, but what is one thing from your culture and one thing from their culture that is an absolute must that needs to be carried on? I'm just curious. And I'll go first since I dropped the question. For me, because of the fact that I can speak Yoruba, but my Yoruba, I'm not gonna lie, because my pronunciation is pretty trash. But I understand Yoruba very well. And I expected my kids to understand Yoruba at least to that level, From my wife's side, she don't have no major expectations like that. I mean, she's from Port Royal, so they're really, really chill people. But they gotta know how to swim. And that was one thing that's funny that we talked about. They gotta know how to swim because they're really like aquatic people. So they gotta know how to swim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like, in my like cultural setting in the Jamaican household, like it really varies depending on where you are. And one thing you touched on is like a lot of people to realize is like, despite Jamaica being so small, we kind of have our own sub-ethnicities in the way you are placed geographically. It's like the standards for you are different. Not where like everyone might think all Nigerians are Yoruba, but they may not even know that there are so many different sub-ethnicities of Nigerians. They may just think you're all just one people, but you have Igbos, Nigerians, Hausas. It's like there's so many different aspects. But for me, it would be like, because I mean, personally, I know a bunch of Jamaican people that can't swim. So they definitely not from Port Royal. So it's like, if you're from the city, like if you're from the port or the country, you know how to swim, because how it works is you got to know somebody that knows how to swim and they teach you how to swim. But if you grew up in the city, it's a good chance you probably don't know how to swim.
Damn.
But I would say like the expectation that has to be carried is just going to boil down to that respect piece, right? Like, the standard for excellence that a lot of Jamaicans carry, the sense of like national pride in what you do, what you say. You could be probably the worst person behind the scenes, but presenting the best of you up front is probably just the most important thing, that image. So it's going to always be that constant proving to your family that you are worthy, that you are worth it, that you are striving for something more, that you're going to place the family on this mantle, because you're never just doing for yourself. Everything you do is a reflection of your family, and family is a very pivotal piece. Like, In the Jamaican family culture, they want to see that you respect your family. Like the moment they don't see that, it's kind of like, yo, that's your way. You know what I mean? Like, get rid of that. So it's like, yeah, that respect for family, that standard. And sometimes it could even be a detriment to where, like I said, you're just constantly doing what you feel your family wants you to do, not really going for what you want and aspire for. So that's one of those things.
I can go.
You could go.
I was gonna say I'll definitely copy Glenn's as far as the respect thing is concerned. You know, all my aunts and uncles, like it's aunt or uncle, and then followed by what their name is, right? I don't, you know, it's just a very respect is a really big thing in all in all interactions. I would say that definitely is something that I would want to make sure is respect for yourself, respect for your family, respect for others, I think is a really big thing. I don't know if that's necessarily a cultural thing personally, but that would be from my side what's super important. If I would guess, probably from my wife's side is kind of just her parents are really big on allowing them to like be whoever they are, live wherever they want, like not be, so like her family lives all over the place. I would say maybe that would probably be something that she would, for them to be autonomous, for them to kind of, do whatever they think is right, go wherever they want to go, live wherever they want to live, kind of be their own people, kind of make their own decisions. Obviously know that they can always come back home if they need to. But I would probably say that would be the thing from her family that I think would be an important thing, kind of being your own self and not knowing family's there, but not feeling like you have to live in a certain area because that's where your family lives, which would probably be hard for me thinking about it. But
yeah, no, so I think my wife and I think what we need is overlap with each other actually. So she's a huge family kind of girl as well. So, and coming from the Nigerian side of things, family is everything, and I kind of already share some of the key aspect of my upbringing, in my family. So both of that is really, really important to both of us. So definitely respect. It's really just the value of family. Family's everything. So it's not I guess that ties back to the respect of the family as well, but it's really just the value of family. And the other side of it is definitely learning the language. So for me, the Yoruba, I think my cousin and I kind of relate in that aspect as well. I understand the language and I speak it, but I'm not very, it's not my strong forte.
Better than me.
I'm not, I don't like, when I speak it, I'm mixed it with English all the time. So I'm definitely right there with the comment you made earlier. And because I don't interact with, even when I talk to my parents, I speak mainly a lot in English. So like, I don't get to practice a lot, but that's, and since my wife also has a Hispanic background. So those languages are really key to our kids. And I think we have to find a way to balance that out, and how to integrate the kids with the culture. So, and one thing that you kind of mentioned, Dre, that kind of made me chuckle a little bit is about the respect and names, and because, my wife actually kind of, that was a topic when we first started dating. It's like, don't you dare call my mom by her first name. That is a no. So Mrs. Balogun, like that is it. And that was one of the first like lessons that we had to like talk about, and like really, and there was one time that she mistakenly dropped her first name, and I was like, ooh, that was not, and she didn't do it on purpose. And I think she was like, it's like, and I think my mom was very forgiving because she realized it wasn't like intentional, but that was, that's really important, especially in the Nigerian community. Don't call me by my first name. And, even if you don't have a first name, you have to call them by Mummy Francis or Mummy, whatever. The first child's name, you called it by Mummy, and the child's name, first name. So, Mummy D Black. So like, or Mummy Glenn. So it's like pretty much a Mummy Dre. So it's really how she learned to like, to learn that. And yeah, so so when you said that, I was like, yeah, that is really key, even in the Nigerian culture as well. It's really
So
important.
is that like the equivalent to like sir or like Mr. or Mrs. Or maybe
Yeah,
Miss or
it's
Mrs.
it's pretty much that. Yeah, but you
Okay.
just don't can't call them like you can't call me if I'm your elder. You better not call me Francis. You know, even
Mhm.
to the level even within siblings. You know, even though we don't practice that in our my family, my siblings and I don't call each other. They don't call me by brother Francis. They call me by my first name. But if you want to get real deep into the
They're
culture, though,
supposed to.
they supposed to call me brother Francis. And I remember when I first came to America, I was calling my cousin by brother for the longest time. And it's still like very weird. It took me a while to actually stop calling him brother Jiran.
I'm like, stop calling me that.
Because like it was like it's something that is part of the respect thing that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to really kind of drop that. And for people that I grew up saying, calling them brother, it's still very awkward for me to not say it because it was so part of who I was. And but yeah, it's just one of those things that you kind of when you get into a new culture, you kind of have to adapt and try to integrate as best as you can.
Could speak to that too. Like if you have a cousin that's older than you call them auntie or uncle. So it's
Right.
kind of strange. You end up with all
Yeah.
these aunt and uncles, and you're like, because they're much older than me. I can't call them cousins. So that it's kind of
Yeah.
funny how they all mesh together. So I'll drop this question out there. Are there any aspects of your culture you wish you could change? And that goes as far as even like finances, career choices, marriage, are there any aspects of your culture you wish you could change?
I mean, I'll go.
Yeah.
I mean, like my culture, I mean, Nigerian people have no shame, bro. Like they will ask you any question anywhere, and they just kind of just are so nosy. Nigerians are so nosy, bro. Like that's they just like want to like they just feel entitled to tell you what they think, their feelings and thoughts and stuff, and I have no like okay. They don't really like question how appropriate it is. They just kind of say what's on their mind. So like it's like so that's one of those things that I wish like we could do a better job at, like just kind of what's the appropriateness of this question and the timing and stuff like that. We don't even think about anything like that. We just like blur the question out and like, well, now here you deal with it. So, but yeah, that's mine.
That's crazy. I got something like kind of similar to that as well, but I kind of feel like maybe it's something that you only experience when you're in Jamaica, but kind of like it's like a good and bad thing, but that whole need for acceptance piece to me is something I wish could really change because it's like, I get it, you don't want to shame the family, you want to always look good and stuff like that, but a lot of times that could be a detriment to where you're kind of making choices that's not really for you, it's just for to please other people. And when you live to please other people, you never get satisfaction yourself. So it's kind of like that's one aspect of the culture I wish could really change. And then sometimes even just the chatting, like just like the pure nonsense. Just like there's just so much, like even in the family unit, it's just like there's sometimes like I'm not gonna say this is all Jamaican families, but sometimes it feels like there's that lack of cohesion where it's just like one family's doing one thing, one family's doing the next, one family's talking about the next family, other family's talking shit about the other family. And it's just like, yo, like how old are y'all? Like what's really going on here? So it's just like kind of like the talking piece. Yeah, it was just like something I wish could also change as well. But I guess maybe it's just an individual environmental thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
Nah, it'd be funny. I think you got it, bro. Shade, you showing some shade sometimes, bro.
Yo, man.
My bad, Jay. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, this is kind of low key well, maybe it's not a stereotype, but definitely something I guess it's not a stereotype because I would say it's probably been true. It's definitely true in my family. It's just probably speaking more to like seeking mental health or help, and or like going to the doctor, like like really going to the doctor, like not like not going to, only going to the doctor when literally your arm is like falling off the bone, right? Like, okay, now I'll go to the doctor instead of like going like a month ago when like it hurt a lot, but you kept on putting it off. So I would say those would probably be the two biggest things. Is just like making sure that, right, for my children, right, it's, doctors are good things, right? Your parents pay a lot of money for insurance, right? So if you're not feeling good, like you need to go to the doctor, right? If you're not feeling good mentally, you could talk to us about it. If you don't want to talk to us about it, there's these different types of resources available to you, right? Whether it's therapy of whatever. So those would probably be the two big things that I would really want to make sure that that my children, however many are in the cards, would be the things that I wouldn't want to necessarily bring over from both my Puerto Rican and Black cultures.
For
Yes,
me, yeah, man, I think it's just one thing, like respect in Nigerian culture is so big, but it's just that there's no boundaries, there's no limit to that respect. And I think that's the one thing that is just, I would really like to change. Always have respect for your elders, but it could be to the point where, just because they older than you, you know what I mean? And you figure things out. I mean, okay, you figured your life out, you become an adult, but because they're older than you, everything you have to say is invalid. It means nothing. I mean, it's even gotten to the yo, bro. I think that might be like a Jamaican thing. That might be a Latino thing. That might be everybody.
Yeah.
Bro.
Don't be giving me advice about marriage and you've been divorced 5 times. I don't care that you're older than me. I don't want to hear your advice on marriage if you've been married 5 times, right? And you have children by multiple people. While you were married, like I don't want to hear nothing from you about that.
Yeah, whoever you are,
Drake shows violence right
now.
now.
Lame, bro.
Yeah,
chill, Drake.
Yo, but that's the one thing. It's just so hard to balance because, like, okay, it's a prime example, even like in a political perspective, So like, brother Son Joe, one of the presidents, or whatever, he's not even in power anymore. And this man they still calling him to ask him stuff, and his opinion matters. Like, why would you run Nigeria like this? Why would you do Nigeria like this? Like, it don't matter, bro. He's not in power. Mind your business, but he's older. You got to give him respect. You got to hold his position. And then, I mean, that's the part I really, really can't stand that. It's like, once you become an adult, I feel like they should treat you like an adult. But as long as you're younger than them, you will always be their child. You will always be a child.
Baby. Yep.
And that's it.
Somebody's baby.
Like two. So I thought of 2 other things. So the first one is how Nigerian, which they tend to read into like even body languages. Like I was like, how you like tell me how you think I feel based on me looking down or I'm scratching my head. So there's a meaning behind everything. Well, that's such a big thing though that I've like noticed in the Nigerian culture. Like you can they tend to read into every little small thing, and I'm like, there's no correlation between the two, but sure, if you think like that's what that meant based on that, then I guess go for it. But like, I don't know why we do that to each other, but it is a thing. And so it pretty much kind of misreading just any kind of sign, any level of signs, or it could be bad language, or it could just be somebody not calling you and you make assumptions out of that. It's just, I guess it's tied to making assumptions. And the second one is the amount of power family have over oneself. Like that is such a really big one. Like in the Nigerian community, you could work your butt off, like build a house that, let's say you build a house back in Nigeria, but like your family can legit like take ownership of that property, even though you work your butt off to build it. Like, it's like your family, I know, like I said earlier, family rules all things, but like when you're actually in Nigeria, there's a level of like, there's another level to that. And those just like I'm just kind of like giving you some of the dirt in our Nigerian culture that I definitely disagree with, And like my mom's like, you can't tell it, because I had like made comments to my mom before about like scenarios, like for like if like just kind of talking about like if something like that happened, and like, yo, I'm gonna tell people like get the heck out of my house. I was like, you can't say that. I was
Mhm.
like, no, like it's like one of those things. Like, man, it just sucks that you can't have any control over even things that you own in that space. Like I thought it's always crazy to me.
Like even hearing that made me think of one other thing too. I'm not even sure if it's just like could be just a black community, black people thing, but it was like in Jamaicans, like if you didn't attend a school that white people didn't attend, it wasn't good enough. If you
Mhm.
didn't work amongst white and Asian people, it wasn't good enough. If you didn't like, it was just like, yo, it had to be people other than you, or it had to be
Yeah.
white people in order to be considered good. If it wasn't, it was like, oh, you ain't doing nothing. Like you went to HBCU, you know, you didn't go to Harvard. You know what I mean? It was like, it was never good enough because it was like, oh, white people go there? Oh, it must be really good. You know what I mean? So it was kind of just like, I don't know like where it comes from, especially when you consider that you're in a country where all the people look like you. So you
Yeah.
mean to tell me that your country's no good and we're probably the most prideful people nationally? You know what I mean? They're probably bordering ethnocentrism, honestly. So it was just like, to me, that was like one thing I'm like, I just don't understand.
It does still throw me off whenever I do see videos though of like Chinese Jamaicans or whatever, you know, it still always throws me off whenever
Or the
you're hearing them
coolie.
speak or whatever. Yeah.
You got some Chinese Jamaicans that speak better patois than like even most people, bro. But it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
long problem with Jamaica where other people have been able to make opportunities that the locals couldn't. And it's just like,
Mhm.
yo, what's up with that degree?
Same thing here.
Yeah. So I guess let's touch a little bit on and probably like one of the last subjects that we touch on as far as like finances go. Culturally, was there any impact to how you handle finances? Was any of that inspired by your culture? Or would you say it was more or less like individual choices that you made based on your situation?
For us, it was solely individual. Really didn't have any cultural implications when it on it. Ultimately, I think at least with Nigerian communities, like the man always kind of takes the lead, but that really didn't factor into our, how we manage anything. It was just a discussion. I just happen to be better with money. I pretty much do money and contracts and stuff for a living, so it only makes sense. So yeah,
And you got all the degrees. So
oh gosh, here we go.
All them
Turn me into a
degrees.
Kanye West song.
Yeah, we gotta drop that Kanye West skit. Like, you know what's gonna keep me warm? These degrees.
Oh,
I know.
gosh. That's me right there, buried
I love
alive
that
with some
skit.
degrees.
I'll keep it quick. My parents did not talk about finances to me growing up. I think my dad, hopefully they don't listen to this, but I think my dad low key like talks about like how finances was like part of the reason why they ultimately kind of got divorced, you know. So but they never really kind of talked to me about, I mean, they did some of the basic stuff of like, you know, if you get a credit card, pay it off every month, but not really anything like super sound or savvy. And, you know, part of that, I think their parents also didn't, right? You know, basically their parents didn't teach them those type of things. You know, my grandfather and grandmother on my father's side had a very traditional, actually both of their parents had very traditional thing. Like my grandfather worked, my grandmother stayed at home, right? So basically the finances was grandfather makes the money and grandmother spends, you know, basically maybe spends the money, or maybe that was also part of it. So they didn't really necessarily, so a lot of this stuff I would say my wife and I have really been kind of learning as we go. Maybe asking her parents what they do. But a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, has been like a lot of learning on the job. I'm hoping by the time my child gets here that we'll be able to start very early on kind of the importance of saving, the importance of money, right? How important it is to save, how important it is to invest, you know, putting your money to work for you, those type of things were just not really conversations that I had kind of growing up. And
In
obviously I
Bitcoin.
don't necessarily yeah, right away.
All
right
the
away.
coins.
Right away, all the
coins.
coins, all the coins. Maybe I'll start. Maybe we should do our own JJC altcoin. Let's
Yo,
get that.
why not?
Why
Let's
the
get that
hell
started.
not?
Why not?
But yeah, I think for me, it's really been kind of learning on the job, researching. Obviously, that our group chat has been really helpful. Glenn is kind of always dropping knowledge. Hey, you guys, look at this. You know, do you guys see the price of this? That's really been helpful for me. So I think it's going to be hopefully by the time my child gets here, it'll be in a situation where I can, teach them everything that I've learned and hopefully put that thought into them that they should also be kind of learning, and maybe they'll teach me stuff because I see all these crazy things about 9-year-olds on the stock market making crazy money, day trading.
9-year-old making 32,000 on Bitcoin mining. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, bro.
Yeah.
Really. But I would say, like, culturally, I would say what I've witnessed is basically some of the people in my family, they had this belief that, some people just had money and some people just didn't. And it was just kind of like, no really lesson. Finances was just one of those things that just were not talked about. Kind of like the big family secrets, the uncle that touched somebody, or, the auntie that's hooked on drugs. It's like, those things were just never discussed. Finances was thrown right in there with them. So it was kind of just like, you kind of had to like venture out and make your own decisions. And, it wasn't until like later in life that, my parents, revealed some things like, hey, this is a way I used to pay off my debts or things like that. But I kind of feel like those lessons are more essential earlier on in life, where you can kind of frame them into perspective, especially with all the avenues we have now today afforded to us. We probably didn't have then, but you can really start teaching the lessons of finances early. But, one thing I noticed, and probably what I wish would really change, is this idea that some people have it, some people don't. And just get that out of your mind. Like, it's really about the situation that you're in. And probably like one of those things that when Jamaicans eventually come to America believing that, oh, money grows on trees and all that other nonsense, it's like, nah, you're probably going to work harder in America than you ever did in Jamaica. Like, you're waking up 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. Like, bro, jobs never end. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I think
you make a good point, because I think sometimes people also, and maybe this is also an American thing too, that like poor people are poor because they want to be poor, right? That that they've put themselves in those situations when when you really think about how hard some of these people are working, like they're working harder than me, right? They're working longer hours than me, right? And they're pay, basically what they're earning is going to the necessities of rent and food or whatever, and they have nothing left over. And those people, that even sometimes I had these conversations with some of my friends who grew up differently, right? In their head, they're like, yeah, similar to what you're talking about. There's people who have it or people who don't, but their thinking was that poor people are poor because they're lazy, or because they want to be poor. And it's like, that's not how could you get out some of those people? Just the way the system is set up for some people, it's really difficult to get out of those situations. It's not easy. Some people just assume that it's just a matter of them working harder, and that is not the case. There are poor people who work harder than people who are billionaires, right? It just is
Exactly.
hard work isn't necessarily always it's not a direct correlation to how much money you make. Which is a really important thing for people to understand, is that it's not just about, some people deserve to have money and some people don't. I think that's probably more of the American side of what you're saying, is that there are people who deserve money and there's people who don't, right? There's people who don't deserve to go to nice schools. There's people who don't deserve to have trash picked up from their neighborhood. There's people who don't deserve to have cops, help them or be a resource to them and not an overseer or oppressor. That's one of the things that is a little bit sad about this country, is that there is very much a classist, like, those people don't deserve good schools. Those people don't deserve good, things.
Exactly.
Not to
That's
break
right.
down.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, yeah, my parents didn't really dealt, but they didn't give us the details into the finance stuff. Like, at least when I was a little older, my parents started sharing, like some of their debt and like how they how some of the stuff they had to do to like keep the house going. Because especially at the time, my mom was like in nursing school, and my dad was, just a regular guy doing his 9 to 5. And we had 3, 4 kids. Like, okay, so like my mom, like later, like the older we got, and she started disclosing some of the struggles too with us, especially when we get in those family moment and you start having those deep conversations. And she started throwing gems. So I was able to get that initial introduction into like credit card bills and debt, and like even like taking money off your properties, stuff like that, and just kind of how to survive. But one thing that my parents kind of really kept really strong to like taught all of us is really kind of tied back to finance, but it's more like how important school was. My parents were a strong advocate of school and schooling, and they knew like, okay, if you can get a certificate that you will do okay in life. Like they really value the importance of a school, a good education. They knew if you had a good education, you would be okay. So to that point, that was really, so, a lot of things that I learned over time is really just kind of, independently. And earlier I kind of talked about how I wish I had more exposure to the investing space at an earlier age, so I kind of learned that over time, and it took me even a couple more years to even get interest and actually put some money in I downloaded Robinhood, and I had it on in my phone, in my hat for like over 2 years. And I did not even put in $1 in it. Like it was in my hat. Like I had it right
No
there.
Bitcoin for you. No Bitcoin for you.
I didn't even and when I did get into Bitcoin, when I was playing, I didn't realize what I was playing with. I was playing blackjack online with Bitcoin. Like I put money, I buy like $300 worth of Bitcoin, and I play blackjack with it, bro. Like that's where I was at, like at the time. Like so, like it was like there was no. I didn't have people who knew about this stuff. Like I wasn't exposed. I had friends or neighbors or family friends who taught us, and that's where I think also where we need to start telling each other some of the secret to success. We need to start sharing those good information to each other, because that's how we all can be successful. We need to look back and put the next generation behind us, because we all wish we had that when we were growing up, and now we understand the importance of it, and we need to make sure we do that to our upcoming generation.
I'm sick thinking about $300 worth of Bitcoin at whatever year it was. How much it
Bro,
was.
I was spending like $300. I lose it at some point, and I put more money in there. So I was constantly buying more Bitcoin, and
I'm sick to my stomach right now thinking about how much Bitcoin that would be worth right now.
Man.
I didn't even know what I was playing with. I didn't realize I was messing with the future. Like literally.
Just gotta have like a set it and forget it mindset when it comes to that stuff, man. Like
you do.
Inconvenient money is the best money. Like, all right. So let's get to the final point, the wrapping up point. And I'll lead this one off. What myth or negative view towards your culture would you like to debunk or like to disprove? And one thing I would say, it kind of, stereotypes are embedded in culture. It's you just can't avoid it, right? So one thing I would like to say is this idea that all Jamaicans are marijuana users is completely inaccurate. Believe it or not, like usage of marijuana, it just was recently legalized in Jamaica, like no lie. I'm not within probably like a few years ago it was legalized to where, you could smoke privately in your home. You could smoke in a dispensary. And if you're caught in public, you're gonna get fined. I think maybe medicinally you can have like a certain amount of ounces or grams on you. But this idea that you could just go to Jamaica and smoke to your heart's content, all the people were cool with it. Big no. As a matter of fact, a lot of Jamaicans look at marijuana smoking as like a loser activity. You know what I mean? Like only losers do that. If you're not going anywhere with your life, then you're gonna do it. Apart from the Rastas that obviously use it for like sacramental reasons, you know what I mean? But other than that, that's like one of the big things. We do have a lot of jobs. I'm not gonna lie, we work a lot. And this other idea that Jamaicans are like culturally women abusers or like just have like a certain hatred towards women. I mean, that's completely inaccurate. You can't just use one person as an example and say all people are like this. Like that's an issue we've been dealing with Black communities, Black people as a whole for years. So those are probably some of the ones that I would like to debunk right then and there.
I like that. Actually, for the record, I love Jamaica. I could live in Jamaica, by the way. I can see myself living there. But I mean, one thing about the Nigerian culture is this myth that we are 419. They call it 419. That we are like scammers and like.
I was gonna use the same one, bro.
Shout out to the Yahoo boys.
Yahoo boys, all this, yeah, like crazy. I mean, like to be fair though, like I feel like it speaks to our cleverness though, because if you like look into some of the clever ways people are stealing money, you're like, man, those boys are smart. And that's why you see Nigerians in all area of all space, really, all area of a career or job, kind of like you will find the chance of you finding one Nigerian is very high. So, but yeah, that's one myth I would like to debunk. This obviously some of those bad apples, but majority of us are, we like to collect degrees like my cousin. Like we are one of the smartest people around, man. Stop playing with us, man. Give us our flowers right now, okay?
Right. Take them degrees, man. For real.
Yes, sir.
Education is key.
Yeah, my cousin gotta add to that.
Oh man. So yeah, I was gonna use that same one. So yeah, I'm gonna circle back to me because I got these cousins stole mine.
You could speak on, Nigerians or Africans don't believe, not all y'all believe in polygamy, right?
Oh,
Like,
damn, that's
wives.
a good damn, bro. No, that's a good one.
or maybe you do.
You got a wife for Nigeria.
Oh my gosh. Okay, how about this one? All right,
Got 10 wives.
Oh my gosh, that all Africans are of royalty or of some, or like we're all like we all like what is it, Coming to America? Like I can't stand that. African booty scratchers, all those different kind of weird. God. I mean, I think this is probably speaking for all Africans in general. That
yeah,
but yeah, like Africa is not just some vast jungle, okay, or vast Sahara where where all the lines roam. Like I mean, like we have the city of gold, which is the capital of Nigeria, and literally it's probably, I mean, damn close to Dubai. Like it's a wonderful city. We have technology, we have cell phones. I mean, Cardi B was in the club turning up. It's not all just like National Geographic. Okay.
So, cuz you're telling me you didn't have a tiger chasing you?
Nah, bro.
Tiger, no monkeys on your shoulders, no?
Nah, I missed the memo. I missed out.
A cheetah.
Man, I thought that was a thing, bro. I missed
the memo, bro. So, I mean, I've been in Nigeria, a few times, and I have never seen a lion face to face. So I'm just keeping an eye.
If I did, you ain't gonna find me there. My black ass would be over there in the corner.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny to hear you say a lot of those things because I would say it definitely is just from really stupid American, right? That all countries in Africa are the same, right? Just even geographically, just I've recently been seeing people like try to show how large Africa is just as a country, right? But basically like putting like whole other countries kind of inside the map of Africa. So it's been really interesting to kind of learn those. A lot of those things of just like how vast, the continent is. It's not. I
mean, we got Egyptians who are Africans and they don't even claim Africa, bro.
Yeah,
they don't even claim us.
Well, they do what is convenient for them, right?
Yeah, true that.
They do when it's very convenient. Sorry, no shots at any
no
of
shade.
Egyptian
it is what it is. No shade,
listeners.
African
I'm sorry.
It is what it is, but no shade.
For real.
I can't think of any like serious ones. I would say that, being silly on the Puerto Ricans one, there's always a joke that like Puerto Ricans always got a knife on them. They always ready to, they always ready to, cut somebody or, whatever. That's one that I would say is not true. I definitely had a couple uncles in Puerto Rico who carried knives on them, but I ain't never see them use them.
Machete.
Machete, and, other instruments. Yeah, I would say that.
Yo, Dre, I just think it's funny how you said, I think it's crazy. Well, you try to debunk that all Puerto Ricans carry knives, and then the first thing you just said, well, my uncle carried a knife.
I got to keep it.
He carried many blades. He was a man of many blades.
Got to keep it a buck, but
I love it.
But yeah, I think probably on the African American side or the Black American side, yeah, definitely. I know that we joked about this, but that that we're lazy, we don't work hard. I think there are enough examples of Black people in this country who work extremely hard. To be lighthearted. We worked for free for a very long time in this country. In some ways, even today, still working free with some of these, for what some of these people are making in some roles. If we really want to keep it, we really want to get
into it. Let's go
into it. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing is just that that we're we don't work hard. And I would say, if anything, maybe you could make an argument that Americans in general are lazy, right? I would say that Black Americans aren't any more lazy than white Americans, right? Maybe you can make a argument that Americans are more lazy in general than other countries, but
okay, that's fair.
If that's what we're gonna say, right? Let's do it that way. But then the last one is just like Black people are not a monolith, right? We were talking about on the last podcast, the woman who had from Chicago who had varying kind of views, right? There are a lot of people who that we're not all the same, even though we do talk about the culture, where we talk about kind of Black culture is it being one thing. There still are really varying kind of views and ideas and standards that that we're not all. We are the same, but we're not the same, I guess, is the easiest way to kind of explain. Exactly. I guess no different from like even here on D Black, you talking about the different cultures even within the Nigerian communities. Maybe you could do the same thing as like people from the Black Americans from the East Coast are way different than Black Americans in California, right? Or Black Americans in the Midwest. That in some ways, it could be just as different, right? They are speaking a different language. They're eating different foods. They have slightly different customs, right? They care about different things, right? So yeah, we're not a monolith, but in some ways we are. We are and aren't a monolith at the same time.
Well, for more content or to learn more about the podcast, feel free to check us out at Jerk Jollof College Pod on Instagram. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday. Stay tuned for the outro coming up right after this to learn additional ways to reach us and send us your feedback. Be sure to like, share, follow, and or subscribe. I've always leave that review, especially if you like or don't like what you're hearing, but we're pretty sure you love what you're hearing. Hope to see you all again. This is in regards or just on behalf of our brother Chunky, who couldn't make it tonight. But we definitely did him some good justice here tonight. What do you think, fellas?
Yeah, one love, man.
Miss love, man.
Miss your Chunks.
Yeah, Missy Chunk. We
angry
gotta
cookie
get his internet.
Chunky.
Yeah, we're gonna get his internet straight. We're gonna get his internet straight, man.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna bring him back, man. But thank you, everybody. Peace.
Peace.
Peace out.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show, or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.